So this week's episode of Demon Slayer, continuing on the trend that last week set out on, and what an enjoyable episode once again. There was a lot of laughs coming from me with this week's episode, I have to say. The training just got even more ridiculous, and instead of just having like Zensu be the bombastic and just sporadic personality, we get the swordsmiths coming in being even worse and even more out there than Zensu ever was. This episode was a hoot. It was entertaining, it was great, and it even had an emotional swing with the canal stuff and the idea of why she is a silent kind of wanderer. And overall, this was a top-notch episode, even slightly better than last week, and I thought last week was already a very entertaining episode that continued on the, hey, we're actually going to make the characters not only be punished for getting wounded, but say, hey, it's time to train before you go on your next mission, because clearly you need it, seen by how you all almost got killed. This episode was hilarious. Like, this was probably either the most funny for me or probably tied with the funniest episode that we've seen over the past 25 weeks. I really think it was that hilarious. At least for myself. I thought when we were getting into the Tanjiro stuff, the first, third of the episode was very reminiscent to what we saw with last week, and I was having fun. I was like, hey, if you're gonna give me more of the same from last week, that's good enough. We've had a lot of kind of intense and pretty heartbreaking moments throughout this run, so if you want to give me more of the same from last week, I'm not going to be complaining. Obviously, the second and third portion to this episode was a lot different and a lot more unique, but I gotta say, just seeing Tanjiro and his kind of fan club trying to help him master the total concentration and beating him awake should he go back to sleep normal, that was just amazing. Especially because for a good chunk of the episode, both Zensu and Inosuke are kind of just relax and chillax and just resting and saying, screw this shit, we're not training, this is too much, because they're kind of emotionally broken at this point in time. But to see the man, he really gave it his all. It's really a proud moment, because you look at how far he was coming both within the beginning of the episode, especially by the end, but you still really look at him and say, man, he still has a long way to the top of that mountain in comparison to the other soldiers. And that's what's so exciting about the future of this anime, is really knowing that when we get stuff like this where he blows into a glass bottle and breaks and we're like, that's really cool, he never could do that. It really shows that his breathing techniques are getting stronger. Hell, he was able to play tag and be able to get the cups away from Kanao, and it's just like, wow, he really increased his speed, his dexterity, like everything has really improved since that forest, but it's still nothing in comparison to where he needs to be if he wants to go up against the head demon or even some of his strongest soldiers. And that's what's exciting while being completely and gut-punchingly hilarious, and that was what was so exciting about the Tanjiro content. But when it shifts over to the Inosuke as well as Zensu, that's where it got real funny for me. I started letting out laughs quite a bit, being like, this is why I love this series. It can be intense, but it can make me laugh. Seeing them do the exact same things that Tanjiro was doing and just seeing it reverse was amazing, especially when you see why they got so motivated, because, you know, we got Shinobu who understands that we got one character who, if you mock him for being like, oh, it's so easy, I thought you could do it, but I guess you can, and then you have this horny kid who's like, oh shit, if I touch his hand, he'll probably get very motivated, and to see why they got so just determined was fantastic. It matched their character writing so much and really snapped them back into it, because they were kind of humming and hawing. They're seeing Tanjiro and they're like, well, I don't want to lose to Tanjiro, so they're kind of giving it, but at the same time they're like, I don't want to do this. But when you mock them or touch them in their cases, it's like, of course that's going to be their wake-up call. It's fantastic, and to just see the animation and just the shifts in art style, I love it when they go absurd with the character models, and this episode had so many shots that were hilarious to look at, and I love how it really was this moment for them to not only, all three of them, get back on their feet and, take their medicines, work hard, and fix what they had to fix here, really get out of the slump that they're in and get their groove back on. But then how they were, making us laugh and have fun to then transitioning to the more emotional stuff, I actually thought was handled quite well, because we've had this character who's been silent, and it was either going to be a physical disability, maybe a speech impediment or something on why she couldn't talk, or it was going to be something emotional and personal, and I'm quite glad they went with the personal route, because as we see, this was a girl who got adopted into Shinobu's family, but before that, she was a slave. She was beaten, she was literally dragged along like a dog, and she had the worst life you could probably have. And it came to the point that her emotions just snapped, that she couldn't feel anything anymore. That's pretty damn sad, especially for how young she was, but to actually see how the sisters came in and were treating her nice and just threw money in this asshole's face to then kind of get her away from there and really save her. It was nice to see why she's like this and ultimately how broken and how much further she still has left to go, because it's all well and good. You see, okay, she got to live with the sisters and that's great. I mean, she's still not talking, but that's fine. But then you see how she makes her decisions. Because she wouldn't eat, she wouldn't sleep, she wouldn't do anything unless you gave her orders, so they gave her a coin and said, hey, if no one's around, flip a coin and that will be your way of determining it. And it really does show you that there's a long way for this girl to go, and it was nice to see that she's finally starting to recognize things that she wants, and I can understand now why people are like, oh, this is why a lot of people ship Tanjiro and Kanao together, because she seemingly has an interest in Tanjiro in some way at least, and it's interesting how she's still not able to push forward with what she wants. She would want to train with Tanjiro, be around him clearly, but if the coin says otherwise, she walks away. So that actually has me really excited for the future with those two to see where it will go, whether it will go really emotional, something bad will happen, or something really pleasant. I think there's actually a lot of routes that you could really make interesting development, and if she ever does actually talk, which if there's any character that could get her to talk, it will probably be Tanjiro, that has me incredibly excited for the future, whether that be a season 2, a season 3, or way down the line, if maybe never will happen. It is something to look forward to because it's that emotional punch to, bring us down. We kind of have that comedy high and we're like, oh, that's the Demon Slayer we all know and love, to then transition right back into the comedy. It actually works quite well because Demon Slayer has cracked the code on being serious and hilarious within a matter of minutes switching between the two. But I am glad. I was wondering, I was like, okay, are they ever going to touch upon, because I would think Tanjiro or someone would say, hey, why do you never talk? And it was nice to get that confirmation on why she's like that. Even though it wasn't directly said to our characters, it's nice for the viewers at least to understand why this girl was, she kind of seemed creepy, she kind of seemed lovable. It was like, what's she doing? Why is she smiling? Why isn't she actually talking? And now we got that answer, which was a very pleasant surprise. It was the most shocking thing within this episode, and easily the most memorable. Though when we got back into the comedy, I love how breaking a sword in this world, even if it's very expensive, it is still a sword. Like, it's not like they had an emotional connection to it to the point like they've had the sword for years and years and years and years, it's an antique or something like that. However, the people who make these swords, this is their everything, and I think we might have had the most death threats that we've seen in one episode, period. Like, this was just, it was hilarious. Is this a training routine? I don't think so, and I love it because I miss this guy. I mean, just the idea that he is so pissed off, like, he would literally, honestly, if Tanjiro would have stood there, he probably would have been stabbed, no question asked. And I love how ridiculous it is, but then you see this other one, you're like, oh, this is Inosuke's Swordmaster. He seems a lot more chill, probably thinking, this guy's a little too ridiculous. Yeah, they broke the swords, but we made them a new one. And to see Inosuke, I wasn't sure what to expect here. I mean, we saw what his old swords looked like, but I thought maybe it was like by design that it had those wedges and things like that. The man takes perfect swords, takes a rock, and smashes them so they're perfect, which pisses the guy off equally. I don't understand why such simple reactions or just simple design jokes crack me up as much as they do, but these characters make the formula work. Because we understand the passion behind these sword masters, and we understand why certain characters would want their swords to feel or look a certain way, but it's like this explosive nuclear bomb of comedy going off, and I ate every single piece of it up, and I just love that training. It was like watching the characters, especially Zensu and Inosuke, once they see that our boy not only has mastered the total concentration, but he was able to play tag, play that cup game, and be able to succeed against someone who none of them can match, being like, God damn it, we're losing to Tanjiro. We gotta work even harder, more weights, more speed. It was so fantastic watching that because it actually was plot progression while being some of the funniest content Demon Slayer has ever seen, and that's the type of stuff you love. Honestly, I would have been fine if this was the last episode, but we still got one more episode before season 1 wraps up, and based on the final image that we see of it, probably the most grotesque demon, I think, it was like, that's gonna be exciting. Whether we fully touch upon this demon next episode or not, like, even if they do, there's no way they're going to conclude that arc. I definitely think that'll be a cliffhanger for season 2, which is basically confirmed at this point. Even though they haven't officially confirmed it, the success for this show is unrivaled. It's getting more. It's just a matter of when. So whether they leave us off on a cliffhanger or something a lot more satisfactory as we wait for more anime remains to be seen, but I'd be fine either way. It's just nice to see that we've had so much emotional stuff, so much hilarious, and I imagine next episode they'll set off on their next journey, maybe reach that train before we get the cliffhanger, something to that nature. But it's nice to see that the gang probably will be sticking together. You got some emotional stuff with Tanjiro and his sister, even though they can't actually talk with one another. But with that said, Tanjiro knows what his sister would be thinking or feeling at this point in time, which kind of further highlights the family bond that this series has going for it. I just feel like this episode, for as ridiculous and as much shenanigans that we see, it actually progressed the plot and characters in a pretty interesting way, while really showing how far they've actually come. But in comparison to where they need to go, it's basically nothing. And that's what's exciting, is that Demon Slayer makes the characters work for progression, and even when they do these amazing things, it's kind of nothing in comparison to where they need to reach, which continues to give your characters new objectives and goals to reach. It's not just like they power up, it's this like natural body progression that feels realistic for their world, and just makes us feel like, goddamn, the writing and just the manga, the studio, they know what they're doing, because these characters feel so goddamn perfect. Just the past couple of episodes have been a blast to watch, and I can't wait to see how the final episode of season 1 is going to conclude next week. But what did everyone think for Anime Originals? What did you think of the comedy? And for manga readers, how was this in the manga for you, and how did it translate in the anime? Let me know down in that comment section below. Now, if you did enjoy, be sure to drop a like and also hit that subscribe button if you have been new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.